morning, church, that the Lord is not like man. And he looks amongst the unworthy for those who will fulfill his purpose. For God does not see just the surface of our being. He sees the inner workings of our heart. So when others told us we would never be anything, God said, but you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. When others told us we had too many weaknesses to be used of God, God said, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. When others told us we would never do anything worthwhile, God said, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. When your family and friends told us that we would never be able to live a life where our needs could be met, the Lord said, I will supply all your needs according to my riches and glory. When I look at the scripture text this morning and remember that Isaiah was one of the greatest prophets that the Lord used to impact the world, I'm reminded that it was from amongst the unworthy that the Lord chose him for service. I just wonder, is there anybody here this morning who would declare that you are unworthy, but you qualify for the Lord to use you in a mighty way? But see, here's the second point. It's in the places of ourselves we consider our most unworthy parts that the Lord focuses his attention for usefulness in fulfilling his purpose. Look at the text. Isaiah declares that he is a man of unclean lips, and he lives amongst a people of unclean lips. He considered that the things that came out of his mouth were the disqualifiers to him being used by God. But the text says that after he declared that it was his mouth that made him unclean, one of the seraphim who had previously been flying over the Lord's head declaring his holiness picked up a live coal from the altar of the Lord with tongs and touched Isaiah's lips with it and said, see, this has touched your lips. Now, there is a bit of symbolism here, for the live coal was a part of the fire burning on the altar before the Lord in the temple. And it was upon the altar where the sacrifices were placed unto the Lord to be burned as a means of repenting and purifying the people. Y'all stay with me now. The seraphim, having taken one of the live coals from the altar and carrying it to Isaiah and touching his lips with it, was an indication that the Lord was purifying the part of Isaiah that Isaiah had deemed most disqualified for usefulness in service unto God. But what the Lord would have us understand this morning is that he specializes in consecrating the worst parts of us for use in his kingdom just by his touch. Despite our thoughts of how far gone we actually are, God is able just by touch to renew and restore us so we might be worthy of service. Now this might not mean a whole lot to you, but if we're going to understand this point, we must recognize the true act of purifying what was thought to be impure by use of fire requires full immersion, a burning up or a melting away of the impurities so that what remains of the parts are considered most precious. For example, in order to have pure gold, the impurities must be removed, which requires the solid gold to be liquefied by placing it in a furnace and melting it down. But in the process of refining Isaiah's lips for service unto him, all it took for God was a touch. It didn't take a melting down or a burning up. All it took was a touch. All it took was a touch from the Lord to heal your body and raise you up from your sick bed. All it took was a touch from the Lord to guide your car around that accident that could have taken your life. All it took was a touch from the Lord to fix your finances. All it took was a touch from the Lord to heal your marriage and restore it. All it took from the Lord was a touch from the Lord to sensitize your heart to the issues of others. All it took to resurrect the relationship you had with your children. I'm so glad this morning that instead of the Lord choosing to burn me up and melting me down, he just chose to touch me in order to use me.